American Lager. Crisp, light, refreshing.
Hams.
It's as American as baseball and apple pie and Snooki and Abraham Lincoln's beard. And here in America, we sure do like our beer. We're ranked second in the world for overall beer consumption, an honor we've earned by tossing back roughly 51 billion pints of suds every single year. And although there are a lot of options to choose from, the style of beer we drink the most by far is the traditional light American lager. Of course, not everyone else in the world loves American beer.
We find your American beer is a little like making love in a canoe. It's f***ing close to water.
Very well-made beers. These are very high-quality beers, but they're kind of light on beer flavor.
This is Ray Daniels, founder of the Cicerone Certification Program in Chicago, longtime brewer and expert beer drinker.
And the main reason is because there's not that much malt in these recipes.
Yeah.
And the Germans have a saying that malt is the soul of beer, and there's not that much malt in these beers.
But how did a style of beer that's drinkable and refreshing, yet has no soul, get to be so popular? 5 reasons: German immigrants, prohibition, brewing technology, World War II, and the post-war consumer packaged goods economy. But I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Excuse me. Could I get a cool, refreshing lager, please?
Here is our beer list, categorized by country. Lagers are listed on the left alphabetically by varietal.
Just Coors. Thanks.
Okay.
Paper cut. Why is that? I would say, like, for most of American history, this was the kind of beer we were drinking.
Right. Well, it really has to do with brewing technology and the migration of German-speaking immigrants coming to the U.S.
Between 1850 and 1900, millions of German-speaking immigrants migrated to the United States. Prior to that, British-style ales dominated the beer industry, but the Germans wanted something different.
Wanted to make a nice, golden, clear, pale beer, because that was the style of beer in Germany at the time. But American barley, the stuff that grows here in the United States, is different than the barley that grows in Europe. And they couldn't make a clear beer with American 6-row barley because it has a higher protein content. The problem, they were very annoyed. They couldn't get clear beer.
I mean, I would be pretty annoyed I couldn't get beer.
Absolutely. You know, it didn't look pretty the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So they figured out that if they took a low protein grain, like corn or rice, and mixed it into the recipe, that they'd get a lower protein content in the finished beer, and the beer would turn out clear. So that was the original reason. It was not to make it cheap. It was not, anything else, but they wanted a nice, clear, golden beer.
The Czech-style Pilsner, which is a type of lager, quickly became the beer of choice. Breweries began popping up all over the place, many of which were owned and operated by German immigrants like Adolf Coors, Frederick Miller, Joseph Schlitz, Frederick Pabst Blue Ribbon, full name, and a soap maker named Eberhard Anheuser. The brewing industry in America flourished, and by 1873 the country had over 4,000 breweries. However, this golden age of golden lager would not last long. The boom in the beer industry was accompanied by a boom in other things associated with beer, like public drunkenness and domestic violence. Then something happened in America that set the brewing industry back a few decades. When the 18th Amendment passed in 1919, prohibition in the United States had officially begun. The production, transport, and sale of alcohol became illegal, and the beer industry all but ceased to exist, with the exception of a few industrious entrepreneurs. When prohibition was finally repealed in 1933, only a fraction of the beer manufacturers from the late 1800s remained, and that number continued to drop every year. Strict state laws combined with heavy government regulation made it difficult for smaller beer companies to survive, not to mention the fact that home brewing was still illegal. During World War II, grain was rationed in the United States, forcing beer makers to rely more heavily on adjuncts like corn and rice. This slowed the reemergence of smaller breweries, but allowed bigger, established breweries to flourish. After the war ended, America didn't need to ration anymore, and we began to adopt a more liberal approach to consumption.
And then the 20th century was pretty much a century of consumer packaged goods in the United States. We had very narrow media outlets. When I was a kid, there were only 3 TV stations, period. I know, ancient history, right?
Yeah.
Everything got narrowed down to a very small number of brands with universal distribution throughout the country. It was true for soap, breakfast cereal, coffee was Folgers and Maxwell House. Everything got narrowed down to a very small number of consumer brands, and beer was no different.
Throughout the second half of the 20th century, the number of independent breweries dwindled as beer manufacturers merged and companies like Anheuser-Busch and Miller continued to grow. By 1978, the beer-making industry hit a record low, with only around 80 breweries operating in the U.S. America's beer got even more watered down when the big beer companies devised a brilliant strategy to sell more beer: light beer.
Light beer
beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Originally marketed unsuccessfully as a diet drink, light beers promised the same great taste, but with less filling, which basically just encouraged people to drink more. Miller Lite and Bud Light's advertising campaigns were hugely successful and further cemented their dominance of the beer industry. Unless you were one of the millions of Americans who enjoyed bland, watery beer, things were looking pretty bleak. But then a miracle happened. In 1977, Congress passed a small brewer tax credit, and in 1978, a bill was signed into law that finally made home brewing legal throughout the country.
Jimmy Carter signed home brewing, one of the other great things Jimmy Carter did.
Wow, what a great man.
Yeah, absolutely. Home brewing became legal, and home brewing really drove the craft brewing movement. It was really tough in the early days because there was no equipment. Nobody was selling supplies to these small breweries. You know, a small brewer might need 1,000 pounds of malt. And they call up a malt supplier, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll send you some malt. You know, how many train car loads do you need?" It's like, well, how much is a train car? 30,000 pounds. Like, can I get 1,000?
Yeah.
You know, click.
It started slow at first, but over the years, the number of small craft breweries began to steadily increase.
So what we're seeing now, what most people think of as the craft movement, the modern one, or the second wave, really started in about 2003. There were craft brewers out there who'd been sort of sticking to their knitting and really, you know, cleaning up their game and getting things good. And new breweries started being founded, and we've had this huge, you know, upsurge of breweries. So that's 30 years of craft beer history in a nutshell.
No longer limited to the light lagers that Americans had been drinking for over a century, brewers can now experiment with a variety of styles and flavors, creating new recipes and borrowing from old traditions as well. In 2015, the number of breweries in America reached an all-time high at 4,269, surpassing pre-Prohibition numbers. Of course, at the same time, after years of mergers and acquisitions, the world's 5 biggest beer companies now control over 50% of the world's beer market. Although big beer continues to dominate, it does not seem to be slowing down craft beer, and we have more options for beer consumption than ever before. This is truly a good time to have a beer, if you're of age, and you drink responsibly. Stay in school. So what do you think? Do you enjoy craft brews? Do you think we're in a beer bubble that will explode at any time? Or are you content to stick with the good old mass-produced American light lager? I kind of just like it all. Let us know in the comments. Last week we did a video all about the Centennial bulb, the bulb that lasted over 100 years, and here's what you had to say. Leo M. Rogers wanted to know some various technical things about the light bulb. Well, it's a 60-watt light bulb and it puts out about 4 lumens, which is pretty dim. Like me, it hasn't been turned on and off very much. It's basically been constantly on for 115 years. The fire chief did mention that turning it on and off can decrease the lifespan, so they keep it on. We asked you what you thought of the idea of planned obsolescence, and many of you had many opinions, so I'm going to list off some here. Metric Imperialist said that he thinks planned obsolescence is a good thing because people will replace their technology anyway, even if it doesn't stop working. Technology is growing very fast and people want to replace things for the next great thing. That's a good point, but I did drive a 1981 Toyota Corolla for many, many years in the 2000s, because I'm like that. George Watson doesn't like planned obsolescence at all. Yeah, it kind of sucks sometimes, doesn't it? Buying a new phone every year because your old one stops working isn't necessary to keep the economy going, he says. And Quentin Leitner, appropriate name for that video, said that we shouldn't even be worrying about consumer goods to be happy. We don't need them. We don't need to keep working, to keep making money to buy new stuff. Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I'm personally just happy that my beer isn't yet obsolescent. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please click the like button. Well, it's a thumbs up button, really. And if you want to keep seeing more, click subscribe. And if you want to help keep the show going, you can go to our Patreon page, which is linked down below and on the screen somewhere. I think it's over there. It's over there. That's all. Thank you. Oh. And thanks to Aaron Yonda for being a waiter. Cheers. A bad waiter, because he's drinking now. And Greg Benson for holding the camera.
Am I supposed to say something?